Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amanda Chalmers. I'm the editor of the Stratford Herald. Thank you for turning out to our hustings event this evening. We're very excited and proud to be able to make a little bit of Herald history tonight with the paper's first live webcast question time style debate. So those who couldn't be here in person will not have to miss out on the political exchanges. And for those who are, there'll be ample opportunity afterwards to replay the proceedings over and over again, thoroughly scrutinise the answers to your questions. And of course, look out for full coverage in the paper on Thursday. Ensuring balance and fair play throughout tonight will be political journalist Preston Witt, who's chairing the debates. Now of the Herald, Preston's also former lobby correspondent in Parliament, so he won't be taking any nonsense. All party candidates will get the evening's proceedings underway with a minute's opening speech, and then it's over to your good selves. We would just respectfully ask that you keep your questions succinct, so as many people as possible have an opportunity to take part, as this event will be called to a close at 9 PM sharp. Finally, big thank you to the team here at Stratford College for providing both the venue and their technical expertise. And of course, thank you to our candidates here tonight: Nadeem Zahawi, Conservative; Jeff Kenner, Labour; Elizabeth Adams, Lib Dem; Dominic Giles, Green Party; and Edward Feeler, UKIP. I'm sure we're all looking forward to a very lively debate. Just a couple of mandatory housekeeping notes, I'm afraid. The fire alarm is not due to go off, but if it does sound, we would ask you to please leave via your nearest exit and gather in the visitors' car park in front of reception. Smoking's not permitted, but if anyone is desperate, the smoking sheds are between D and K block. And of course, please turn off your mobile phones. With that said, I'm sure we're all eager to get proceedings underway. So without further ado, I'll now hand over to your host and chair for the evening, Mr. Preston Witt.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda. And again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this Herald election debate. There should be some lively discussion because all 5 candidates here tonight have strongly held views about why they're standing in this election and how important the outcome is on a national level. I've asked each one of them to speak for about a minute as a start to the proceedings, and then we can get into the debate proper. But just before we begin, I'd like to ask if there are any people here tonight who are as yet undecided as to how they will vote on May the 7th, and if so, could they please raise their hands? A fair smattering, yeah. Well, at the end of the debate, I'll ask the same question to see if anyone has formed a view or changed their minds as a result of what is said tonight. Okay, then let's kick off with the brief statements. If I can start with Nadeem first.
Thank you very much, Preston. Thank you for organising tonight's hustings. Many of you know that I was born in Baghdad to Kurdish parents, and I came here when I was 9 years old. This country has given me and my family 2 gifts. The first gift is that of freedom. There was no freedom under Saddam Hussein. And of course, the second is opportunity. And I hope we get to discuss these things here tonight. There are 3 things that a government is responsible for, a prime minister is responsible for. The first is defense of the realm. The second is sound money, i.e. balancing the economy. Everything flows from that. You can't have a strong NHS. If you don't have a strong economy, we can't have a strong education system without that. And of course, the third is a safety net, so that you can look after those who can't look after themselves. If you vote for me, then I bring to this job real world experience. I ran my own business, I built it from scratch, and of course I've used that experience over the last 5 years to fight for Stratford. I've forced a rethink on the government planning rules to make sure that developers, rapacious developers, do not attack us through those loopholes. I've backed the hospital in Stratford, and of course our very great schools, the grammar and academies in Stratford. If you vote for me, the future is about backing this town and this constituency, making sure it's even better place to live in the future. Part of that is my work on traffic. Stratford has a chronic traffic problem, and I hope if I am re-elected as your Member of Parliament, I can come back here to you and say to you that what you've told us to prioritise, which is the Birmingham Road and of course a second river crossing and a relief road, then we have done something about that over the next 5 years. I will back the expansion of our grammar schools, academies and apprenticeships, of course, and I will make sure that this place is an even better place to live in by backing all the independent stores in Stratford.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Liz Adams.
Okay, thank you to the Herald and to Preston and for you to turn up here and giving me the opportunity to put my views across to you. Despite the national buzz, many people here in Stratford think their votes won't matter because the same old always wins. I hear this from more and more people, enough voters actually, to mean that change is possible. But it's not good enough to just ask people to vote against the same old status quo. I want to give you something to vote for. I have 2 young children at school here. I work in a pharmacy on a low wage and I rely on our local services just like you. I've not been parachuted in from London. I'm not in the pockets of vested interest. I am invested in the future of this district. But a vote for Lib Dem here in Stratford is also a vote for a dedicated local team with a real record of action. Hazel Wright in Studley has protected the Greenbelt. Susan Junid won £250,000 for Ulster's flood defences. Stratford Lib Dems and fought to get something done about the traffic. Richard Cheney works with local services in Shipston, such as the Youth Club, to raise funds and ensure that they have a future. As the main opposition here in Stratford, Liberal Democrats is not a wasted vote. Voting Lib Dem is the best chance for residents here to get rid of the Tories, but it's also a vote for a local team and someone in Parliament that will stand up for you and fight for the future that our residents deserve.
Thank you, Liz. Jeff Kenner.
Yes, well, thank you very much indeed, Preston, Amanda and the Stratford Herald for giving us the opportunity to have this debate. I put it to you that in Stratford, we need a fresh start. If you elect me, I'll be a full-time MP with no consultancies, I'll live here, and I'll work flat out for all of you as my constituents, whatever your views. I've proven that Labour can win in Stratford-upon-Avon. I'm the first ever Labour councillor for Shipston Ward, and I won because I recognised that if we're going to have housing development, we need to win the chance of infrastructure improvement that the local people need, whether that be schools, whether that be a medical centre, whether it be local shops. I've also proven, I think, with my time in the council, that Labour can be effective, more effective than the Liberal Democrats. Take traffic. We need action, not summits. I voted for the only option that delivers a bypass and a second river crossing along Marston Airfield, a brownfield site. The Tories, the Lib Dems, voted for an M40 Newtown that offers nothing for Stratford. If I'm your MP, I'll make SDC wake up and smell the coffee on planning. The Tories' extreme plans are fiscally irresponsible. Our NHS can't survive on an IOU. Only Labour has a fully funded plan for an NHS with time to care, with more GPs, nurses and home carers. And unlike the Tories, every manifesto policy is paid for, will balance the books and cut the deficit every year. The next generation deserve better. We'll protect school and college budgets, we'll cut tuition fees and we'll cap private rents, which will also save housing benefits. And we'll build council houses where people need them. In 2010, our ad in the Herald said, "Vote Lib Dem, get Tory." It was very prescient. We don't need to place that ad again this time. You can vote Labour and Stratford, and in the knowledge that Stratford cannot afford another extreme Conservative government. Britain can do better. Britain can do much better with Labour.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And Edward Feeler.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Edward Feeler. I am a local resident. I've been around here since 1980. I work for a living and recruit staff into the motor trade. So I know a fair bit about the economy. I know about going to work, and I know about people out of work. I chose to stand for UKIP because I really do believe that they are the party that represents my views better than any other party in this country. We're consistently polling at about 15%, and frankly, we're the most relevant party to form a coalition. We know that we won't be forming a government on our own, but we certainly will be in position to be involved in a coalition. Now, locally, we have a councillor, one councillor in Tamworth and Arden. We obviously would like more because we'd like a say in the way Stratford and District is run. So we are going to be standing 16 councillors in the election on May the 7th. We'd love to have stood more, but frankly, we didn't have any more to stand. So there we are, 16 councillors that you can vote for to give us a chance to show you how much we care for Stratford, how we can improve the housing situation, the jobless, the NHS, how we can improve our roads, and fundamentally make this a better place for all of us to be in. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Edward. And now Dominic.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. Although it's fair to say there's nothing on television anymore since the BBC sacked Jeremy Clarkson, is there? It's one of my policies gone. Imagine having a secure, fulfilling and decently paid job, knowing that you're working to live, not living to work. Imagine coming home to an affordable flat or house and being valued for your contribution and character, not for how much you earn. Imagine knowing that you and your friends are part of an economy that works with the planet rather than against it. Imagine food banks going out of business. Imagine the end of poverty and deprivation. Imagine a more equal society. More equal societies almost always do better than less equal ones, and that's true for the well-off as well as the poor. Almost every modern social and environmental problem is more likely to occur in a less equal society. Imagine flicking a switch and knowing that the energy was coming from the sun, the wind, the earth, the tides, energy forever. Imagine not having to decide between heating or eating. No fuel poverty. This is all possible. This is all Green Party policy. Imagine you don't have to anymore. Vote Green. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. We've had several questions sent in to us, some of whom, or some of the people, in fact, have turned up tonight. There's one particular question, and since the health service is such a big issue all around, one of the questions that's been put forward is by Dr. John Golding, and he's asking, what steps would you take, this is of the panel as a whole, what steps would you take, if elected, to mitigate the disaster of the Health and Social Care Act of the last Parliament? Now, Dr. Golding is here tonight, and what I'd like him to do is explain what he means, first of all, by the unmitigated disaster.
Thank you. Is that on? I'm an NHS consultant, so I've seen firsthand some of the impacts of this act. My concerns stem from the widespread structural reorganisation that was foisted upon the NHS, having been promised that that wouldn't happen, and the enormous cost and bureaucracy that that has entailed. Secondly, the mechanism to allow increasing privatisation and marketisation of the NHS, which distorts priorities. That's the sort of thrust of my argument, and I'd be keen to know, I think it is acknowledged that it was probably the biggest mistake of the last government. What steps could be taken?
Thank you very much. Well, Nadeem Zahawi, can you answer that question, because you are the party of government, as it were?
Sure, absolutely. Dr. John calls it a disaster. Well, that disaster, for me, has meant taking out 20,000 bureaucrats and recruiting an additional 9,000 doctors and 7,000 more nurses. So if it's such a disaster, I don't think we would have managed to take out that many bureaucrats and recruited that many good doctors and nurses. Dr. John talks about the privatization. Under Labour, about 4.5% of the NHS services were contracted out. Today, after 5 years of the Act, it's 6%. So it's about 6% more. So 94% of NHS services are still delivered by the NHS. I am very proud of our track record on the NHS. Simon Stevens, who was recruited, to be fair, by Labour to head up NHS England, the chief executive, has said to us that he will need an additional £8 billion above inflation by 2020 to be able to deliver the NHS that we are all so proud of. An NHS that can look after 1 million people over the age of 75, an NHS where GPs will work 7 days a week, 8 a.m. till 8 p.m., an NHS that really does deliver for the people, free at the point of delivery, an NHS that bills Stratford Hospital. I am very proud of our track record. We said to Simon Stevens, we will deliver that money, £8 billion over and above inflation by 2020. I think the Liberal Democrats have also committed to that. Labour have said they'll only do 2.5 billion. That is our pledge to you here tonight and to the rest of my constituency. If I am part of the next Conservative government, we will deliver that £8 billion a year by 2020 that Simon Stevens has asked for.
Thank you for that. But before we go on to any other member of the panel, can I ask Dr. Golding what he thinks of that response of yours?
It's difficult to comment, really. Just to give one example, in Nottingham, not our area, but world-leading dermatology department, this is my own specialty, dermatology, has been reduced to rubble by the perverse commissioning setup that has been introduced in this Act. And the fact that private companies can come in, bid for services, it's just ruined a world-leading department, and now the whole of Nottingham has got no acute on-call dermatology provision, for example. And you say, for example, getting the GP services, providing 7-day working, this is obviously desirable for patients across the country. My wife's a GP locally and is run off her feet. There just is an enormous recruitment crisis for GPs, and that's, I mean, it's all very well saying you're going to have GPs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's just not physically possible with a lack of GPs being trained.
Which is why we're committed to adding another 5,000 GPs over the next 5 years. But I hope you agree with me that the 4.5 figure going up to 6% is the right figure in terms of contracting out from the NHS, i.e. 94% is still delivered by the NHS. Am I right or wrong on that?
I can't comment on that. I'm not aware of that.
Thank you very much. Jeff Kenner, what do you think of that?
Well, I completely agree with Dr. Golding, and I'd like to say, first of all, give a complete commitment that one of the first acts of the Labour government will be to repeal the government's Health and Social Care Act. And incidentally, we ought to add that the Liberal Democrats are a party of this government, as well as the Conservatives. What that will do, and this is very important, let's be quite clear what the effect of that will be. First of all, it will actually put an obligation on the Secretary of State to ensure that we have a National Health Service, because that's been taken away by that Act. Secondly, it will scrap the competition regime and restore proper democratic accountability for the NHS. Let's bear in mind that what we're talking about, Nadine has various figures about the level of the scale of privatisation. But what I'm concerned about is the kind of extremes that we could go to under a future Conservative government. Because what we must recognise is that this legislation is about forced competition, not a system based on cooperation, which was the very foundation of the NHS, but one of forced competition, of a gradual, stage-by-stage fragmentation of the NHS. Where private companies are involved in providing clinical services, and we have a situation where that's already there, then what we're going to do, in order to reduce that, is to impose a cap on any profits that they can make from the NHS to ensure that the needs of patients are always put first. So it must be cooperation before competition, and it must be patients' needs before profits. But I must come back on what Nadeem has said about NHS funding. He mentioned £8 billion. How much has he found to fund that? The answer is zero. George Osborne was asked, different numbers have been produced on this, I think 17 or 18 times, about this on the Andrew Marr programme, and he said, there is no, it's just an IOU. That's the effect of what he said. When Nadeem was asked about this at a previous hustings, he admitted it would have to be looked at after the election. So the reality is that you either go on a whim, on an IOU, or you look at a fully funded plan, 2.5 billion, because what Labour is saying, and I go back to my original statement, is that we will and we must have fiscal responsibility, but we must ensure that this 2.5 billion is just a start, but it's fully funded. And it means that we will immediately be able to put in extra doctors, extra nurses. We will address the crisis that there is arising from the increased waiting lists, the longer waiting times, and so on. How come, if this has been so wonderful, that we have this decline going on? Now, we've got to put that decline into reverse, and we've got to join up healthcare with healthcare, social care, and also mental health services. We've got to have a joined up approach. We've got to get away from this marketisation, and we've got to put first principles back into the NHS.
Before I go to any members of the audience for a comment on what's just been said, Nadeem would like to respond briefly to what Jeff Kenner has said. So if you could please keep it brief.
Thank you, President. I'm only responding because I was name checked, so I thought I'd better come back on that. And Jeff referred to our commitment to deliver the 8 billion. What I say to you is, judge us by our track record. We committed to deliver the NHS and ring-fence the budget, 12.9 billion. We've done that. We deliver today, in real terms, an additional 7 billion a year to the NHS, and we will do it again by 2020. If you want to see an NHS run by Labour, you can go to Wales. Labour have been running the NHS in Wales for decades. People in Wales, including some of their candidates, who they almost deselected, will tell you it is a disaster. People have to actually travel across to Herefordshire to try and see a doctor. That is what happens under Labour. Andy Burnham said it is irresponsible to protect the NHS budget in 2010. We protected it. We will protect it again if we're re-elected.
There's a gentleman at the front there, sitting next to Dr. Golding.
Excuse my voice. I'm not sure what Dr. Golding will make of this. I've only met him this evening, so I better sit apart from him. Nadeem and Mr. Kenner, I've had the unfortunate experience in the past 12 months. I've been in Coventry for a heart operation in July, in Warwick in December, and in February this year in Solihull Hospital for a new knee. So I think my qualifications are fair enough from a hospital bed to tell you what it's like as a patient. May I suggest to all of you, you're throwing figures around. That is not the problem. The problem is quality. And believe me, it's the same in all of those 3 hospitals. It's a common problem. The Conservatives, when they came in, promised there would be no dictate from Whitehall. But, you know, here we are again, 9 million, 8 million, 2 million. This is not the problem. I trained in work study, and I can tell you, it is arguable that there is not a serious shortage of nurses. But I know that in Solihull, as I was recovering, they are throwing foreign doctors so that some of them were so embarrassed. I was interviewed 4 times by different doctors who all go through the same. You did nothing at all, I don't think, Nadeem, about getting the management off their backsides, getting into the wards and instead of attending meetings. They don't deal with the detail on the wards. The nurses are like headless chickens. They need supervision. And as for your promises to lower the bureaucracy, what do you think that 4 or 5 times a day a nurse comes around with a trolley? She puts an armband on you as a routine. And most of the time it's tick, 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 tick. Turn the page. Tick, tick, tick. You think I'm lying? Go into a hospital without an escort of the top brass, who never go onto the wards, by the way, unless you go with them. And I think the problem, sir, is quality, not necessarily quantity, although there may be a case for that.
Thank you very much for that. You were talking about management. This is the Daily Mail today's Daily Mail. It's talking about hospital chiefs got 35 million in pay rises last year. 50 bosses raked in more than 400,000. Does anyone in the audience have a view on this? Gentleman's sitting there.
In my experience, I must admit, and that of my wife, both of whom have been through quite a bit on the NHS over the past 5 years, has been favourable. I think that most of the consultants and the nurses are enormously friendly and helpful. However, I do agree completely, but I don't think it's a problem that these people can do anything about. They're MPs. Do you know what I mean? You can't just say, look, behave yourselves and work hard. You can't. It's an enormous organization that has got all these regulations and, protections that are part of the European, I'm afraid to say largely, thing that I just think, and I agree entirely with what you have to say, that my mother was a nurse and my father was a doctor, and she was always very proud of the fact that she was a Nightingale nurse, and you had matron who was like Hattie Jakes. That's what you need. You need discipline. But we're moved into a new era where that won't happen. And these people, whatever they say, can do nothing whatever about it. All they can do, any of them, is give you statistics.
Make it more transparent.
You can't. You can do nothing.
No, of course you can. You can make it more transparent. You can change the contracts.
If the Secretary of State can't do it, you can't do it.
We have already made it more transparent, so you can make it, and the contracts, you can make the contracts of whistleblowers can come out without the fear of actually being
Well, you
targeted.
say that, but it doesn't
we don't
happen.
end up with Staffordshire.
It doesn't happen.
Well, it's already happened.
I'm not having a go at you. I'm actually on your side.
I understand.
Because I agree with you can do, but I think I don't want to dominate this. I just think that you people are restricted in what, even though you want to do it, what you can do. I mean, everybody has their own. I don't want to hog the conversation. Somebody else must have a point of view.
Thank you. Yeah. Can I just express a point of view? I think that is, accusing you of being simplistic, that's simplistic. We have a massively aging population. We don't seem to be able to engender the same sense of service that earlier generations are yielded. We're in a terrible, terrible financial mess, and I can never forgive the Tories for trying to represent nibbling at the deficit as solving all our problems. The national debt is going to be bigger at the end of this administration than it was when it started. We have hung enormous millstones round the necks of future generations, and that we whinge that we want better national health service. I mean, I really despair. You can't blame Europe. You can blame our own industry, country. We've wanged it on the card for 60, 70 years. We're facing the debt, and now we're worrying why it's all gone pear-shaped. I could cry.
Hello. Can I just ask a different question, particularly the major parties? Are you going to retain the private finance initiative? I mean, you're burdening future generations with huge debt. There are hospitals with mothballed wards because they can't afford, to service themselves. They're going into debt, and it's the PFI that's doing it. You could raise the money in government and pay for these things more cheaply.
Well, briefly before Nadeem answers that, I think that it's only right now to ask Liz Adams. Yeah, what you're being told basically is that whatever you want to do, however much you want to do it, if you're in power, you won't be able to. That's what's just been said. What do you think of that?
I think it's fairly defeatist. I think if we're looking to stand for the job of MP, to go in there with the idea that there's certain things as important as the NHS and that as a politician I can't do anything about it, well, why the hell am I applying for the job then?
Yeah.
You know, I genuinely think that with a bit more common sense thinking from people who actually live in the real world, actually we could come up with some solutions, which is what I'm a big promoter of. I wish more people would get involved. You know, if you've got an idea, let's hear it. And that's what the Lib Dems are about. It's getting more of the community. I mean, in regards to that question, can I respond to Dr. John's original question as well?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, one of the big things that we want to push for is better involvement of patient groups so that we can hear how services are affecting people on the ground and what we might need to do. In terms of the Health and Social Care Act, I am fed up of the NHS being kicked around like a political football. I think it's too important, and I think it shouldn't be a case of various governments coming in and turning it over based on ideology. Behind the Health and Social Care Act, it sounds good. The initial idea was to take it away from bureaucrats, take it away from politicians, and put real power in the hands of doctors, people, consultants who are caring, and let them decide how services could be run. And I think that's a really admirable aim, but I don't think it has been effective in some of the initial aims it was meant to do. Lib Dems in Parliament did fight hard to take out some of the worst aspects of it. And one of the things that we would do if we were part of a future coalition is fight hard to remove the contractual obligations of local services to basically put out services for bidding by private companies. If there's no financial reason for them to do that, and if they're doing a good enough job for themselves, they shouldn't have to do it. That's again ideological, and it has no place in caring for our health service. What we would also do is we have committed the £8 billion funding. We are the only party who has set out a comprehensive plan, given where we would make cuts to pay for it. And we have properly costed that full £8 billion worth of funding. And what we would do after that in 2020 is set up a non-partisan fundamental review of NHS and social care funding so that they can look at how we are going to pay for it in the future. Again, removing it from politics and putting it in the hands of professionals and people so we can finally come up with a solution, which I think we can do.
Dominic, the Green Party is a fairly idealistic party. Do you think that, or do you agree that you won't be able to do anything about it, as the man said?
Shouldn't all parties be idealistic? Is it just us? I think they all should be, shouldn't they? God, it's hard sitting there for half an hour, desperate to talk. Nadeem said, judge us on our track record. 5 years ago, David Cameron, there will be no more top-down reorganisation of the NHS. And there was. So I think that's the record we can judge them on. Andrew Lansley, who was behind it, was pushed all the way by Oliver Letwin in the 2012 Act. Oliver Letwin's written a book called Privatise the World, in which he defines privatisation as outsourcing. So the NHS has already been privatised. Outsourcing is what governments do when they stop governing. This NHS has been fragmented, its services have been fragmented, companies take what they want, cherry pick the profitable bits. We've had a 9% increase in administration costs. Almost all the female side of my family work in NHS, and so I know a little bit of the horrific conditions they have to put up with. And it's a brave man who brings the Daily Mail into a hustings, because how you can work for the NHS and then go home at night and see some of the things that they print about what's not happening or is happening in NHS. We actually spend less as a percentage of our GDP on health than France, Germany, or even America. So I don't think the NHS is too expensive. It's the one thing I've had more emails about than anything else. And the only reason we've still got a partly public NHS is because the people of this country care about it. 5 more years to the Conservatives with TTIP, and we won't have an NHS. It will have been sold off. The Green Party Well, to answer your question, and Caroline Lucas fought for this all the way through, we will reinstate the NHS bill. Caroline Lucas, Green MP, voted against the 2012 Act. I liked almost everything Jeff Kenner said, but that has to come with the caveat that it was Labour who started this process in the 90s of privatising the NHS. We would put £12 billion into the NHS. Part of that will be funded by taxing sugar and fatty foods, and a third of that price would go on making fresh fruit and vegetable cheaper. That would be a way of making NHS cheaper in the long run, because our country will be healthier. All of the Green Party policies would make our nation healthier, and then would need the NHS less. And free social care for the elderly as well. So to go back to the original question, the way to get rid of the Health and Social Care Act 2012 is to vote for parties who would actually reinstate the bill, and Caroline Lucas has a 100% track record of fighting against this privatisation.
Just a quick point about the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail weren't attacking expenditure on the NHS. They were actually attacking very large salaries that are paid to some managers within the NHS.
Yes, I know, but the only thing in the Daily Mail that's true all the time is the date.
Are you saying then that are you saying that these managers aren't paid what the Daily Mail is saying they're being paid?
I'm saying I don't believe anything I read in the Daily Mail.
No, fair enough.
No.
Fair enough.
It needs someone like Ed Miliband to stand up to the Daily Mail, like he did when he defended his father. And I think when we look at that kind of reporting, we need to be, we need to bear in mind what type of journalism we're seeing sometimes. But clearly, this story is perhaps highlighting a different kind of issue.
Yeah. What's UKIP's take on this particular debate
on the Daily Mail NHS? Or the NHS?
Well, both actually. Yeah.
I think the Daily Mail is a bit of a sort of middle ground newspaper, is it not? Yeah.
It's a Daily Express you like at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, no, the Express like us. Yeah.
£1 million.
Yeah, but don't worry about it. It's just one of those things, Dominic. It happens.
Taking money from non-doms.
I beg your pardon? Did we? Anyway, Dr. Golding, and this gentleman here, we would stop further use of PFI in the NHS. We'd encourage local authorities to buy out the PFI contracts early when it's affordable. We also will replace the Monitor and CQC Commission with elected county health boards to be more responsive scrutineers of local health services. So these will be able to inspect health services and take evidence from whistleblowers. Now, in my humble opinion, and this is a personal opinion, Preston, I actually think, going to what Liz said a moment ago about being a political football, the NHS is exactly that, a political football. It should not be politicised in any shape or form at all. It should be separated from government. It should be run by a separate commission, and it should not be governed by however or whoever is in Parliament who's got a bit of money. We have costed out what we would put in the health service. I don't need to give you that because it's in our manifesto, and everybody else has been giving you numbers, so I won't bother. But if you want to hear them or see them, they're in the manifesto. If you want to hear them now, please ask me. But it is my opinion that we should actually depoliticise the NHS completely.
Why did Nigel Farage propose to privatise it?
He didn't propose to privatise it, Jeff. You know that. I mean, that's just not...
Check YouTube then.
Well... No, I mean, the reality of it is that, we have an NHS which is not working. I mean, if you want some numbers here, we've got 48% of NHS staff are non-clinical. We've got nearly 1 million staff within the NHS are paid £100,000 or more as salaries. The Conservatives or the Coalition have cut 1,800 nursing jobs since 2010. And astonishingly, 53% of NHS trusts are in deficit. And there's something in that newspaper that Preston was referring to a few moments ago, where the woman that's in charge of, and I can't remember which trust it is, which is heavily in debt, paid herself £1.26 million last year. Fair play to her, if she can get away with it. That's what's fundamentally wrong with the NHS. The whole thing is skewed, you know, and the medical profession, the clinical profession are being asked to pay the price of the management and administrational staff within the NHS that are slowly but surely driving it into the ground. That's my opinion, I'm sorry.
The gentleman there in the middle, in the second row, who wishes to... Sorry?
That can't be right. That can't be right.
Brilliant. There's only 1.3 million employed in total. Everyone wants to quote stats. If you're going to have the nerve to do it, all of you, get them right, and we can check them, and we will do later. So either quote correct facts or don't bother at all.
Richard, am I right in saying that the third biggest employer in the world?
Yeah, but you said there were a million people earning over 100,000.
Yeah.
That's not correct. There's only 1.3 million altogether. So that means 2/3 of them or more are earning fantastic salaries. Why are we complaining?
Definitely check that then.
Was that a sort of slip of the tongue on your part?
I don't think it was a slip of the tongue. Based on the research that I've done earlier on today, I thought that was correct, but I shall certainly check it.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Jeff Kenner wishes to... there's a gentleman over there first, Jeff, before...
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. I'd just like to point out just one thing quickly that I've noticed during this one question, and that is, apart from the Liberal Democrat lady, all the other candidates have just knocked each other's parties. So I commend you for the fact you've just said what the Lib Dems would do, and you're not knocking what the other parties have or haven't done in the past. You've got to forget the past. The present doesn't exist. You've got to look to the future, and as far as I can see, there's only the Lib Democrats that's prepared to speak about the future and what their party will do.
Well, I'm sure some of the other parties' supporters will come in to support their candidates. But what I would like to just come back on, fair enough. No, it's perfectly legitimate, and I hope that that there isn't, you know, I would hope that that isn't the case. But what I welcome the fact that, in order to be positive, I welcome the fact that some of the Health and Social Care Act might possibly be repealed if the Liberal Democrats were to have some influence. But I think it's more important actually to repeal it and recognise that that isn't actually a massive kind of reorganisation. All it does is go back to a situation where we don't have the forced competition, and we focus on democratic accountability. It doesn't involve some kind of massive reorganization. And it's not ideological. The only thing that's ever happened that's ideological, as I can see, is the way that Andrew Lansley drove through the Health and Social Care Act in the first place, and the kind of fundamental change that means in the culture of the NHS, which I think Dr. Golding has so eloquently described. But what I wanted to come back on, I think this is a positive point, a big follow-up from what the gentleman has said, is that I think we can make a difference as MPs, because once we have this change of approach, once we get rid of this marketisation culture, we can actually focus on the fundamentals, on prevention and early prevention, on joining up services from home to hospital, so that when people cannot get to see their MP, cannot get to see their GP, they're not forced to go to A&E, that there are actually the opportunity for people to, there are sufficient GPs, there are sufficient nurses to provide that support. And there needs to be more home care for elderly people and disabled at home. There isn't enough. We need to join up all of those services. So maybe there's a lot of consensus around that, and whoever's MP will push for that. But I believe we can't do that within the kind of structure that we would inherit if we didn't repeal this legislation.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, just Liz, first of all, then
I just want to point something out, because I work in pharmacy and there's a lot of talk about prevention, and I think some politicians are a bit clueless as to how big an issue this is. because there are a lot of things in the National Healthcare Service now. The increase of people with things like diabetes, asthma, allergies. And I know just from supplying over-the-counter medicines, there are a lot of simple things that you can't do without a GP seeing a patient if they've got conditions like that. So this talk of providing more GP appointments and prevention and stopping people from having to go to the GP in the first place, it's a massive, massive job. And that's why I believe that we should be looking to the professionals in the healthcare community to have a bigger say and look at how we can distribute services and how we can solve this issue, rather than it being left up to just politicians to do what they think might be best.
Edward, yeah, sure.
I would like to ask Dr. Golding, if I may, how would you perceive the best way to take the pressure off A&E?
I think I'd probably be most in keeping with Jeff's, the Labour vision. I'm not a lateral Labour supporter, but there's no doubt that integrating social care in the community, having a better intermediate care sector, would allow people, elderly people, to be discharged from hospital. And then you've got the flow from A&E, which otherwise is backing up with ambulances and patients who need that acute emergency care. So there has to be better integration. There definitely needs to be more money. There's no doubt that we don't spend enough GDP-wise. We need more doctors. We definitely need a lot more GPs. Those are the sort of thoughts I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I speak quickly?
Yes, okay, Dominic.
We need to look at it in the wider context as well. We need to be healthier people, and that's what our policies talk about. We need better public transport. We need tax on cigarettes, tax on alcohol, tax on sugar to stop people getting tax on breathing. No. We need integrated systems that make us live happier, healthier lives, and a more equal society does that for everybody. More equal societies like Scandinavian countries have less health issues, so their NHS equivalent costs less. Everything needs to be thought of together, not just as one compartmentalized thing after the other. Thank you.
There was a question earlier from the floor about PFI, and I can understand where Gordon Brown as Chancellor and then as Prime Minister was trying to head to, i.e. to attract more investment into buildings, into the NHS. But there was no better example of how bad the contracts were. When we came into office in 2010, my colleague and friend Jesse Norman led a campaign against PFI and the PFI companies, because their contracts were so extortionate. In some cases, it would cost the NHS £50 to get a picture put up in a corridor. And they couldn't go out to anyone else, or wouldn't allow anyone in the hospital to just, take a quick sort of hammer and a nail to put the picture up. They very quickly came up with £1 billion in back payment to government. So I think you're right to bring it up. The investment into NHS hospitals obviously was much needed, but the contracts themselves were one-sided to the extreme.
Just on this theme of creeping privatization of the National Health Service, how many people in this audience fear that the National Health Service will be privatized gradually over the next few years? Well, that's a fair number. How do you, well, I mean,
to go ahead with it. Yeah. It's obviously going to happen. A lot of people will object to that. It cannot be sustained the way it is. But nobody's got the guts to say politically, okay, we'll lose votes, but let's get on with it and do it.
Isn't that what the former chief executive of NHS England was saying? That the parties aren't addressing the issue properly because it's such a massive crisis that they're almost frightened to.
Well, you can only go by what the current chief executive of the NHS is saying, and Simon Stevens has said very clearly he needs £8 billion more over and above inflation by 2020, and two parties have pledged to deliver that on this panel. You can ask the other parties what they will do.
Sorry, Nadeem. Just for the benefit of this audience, how are you going to fund it? You haven't identified a single penny of that 8 billion.
I think that question has already been asked, and I said that in this Parliament we were asked to deliver £7 billion per annum in real terms. We pledged before the 2010 general election that we will ring-fence the NHS budget. Labour said that was irresponsible, ladies and gentlemen. We did deliver it, and we will deliver it again.
Well, is that going to come, therefore, somehow out of some of this 12 billion? Because that's already been allocated, the 12 billion welfare cuts, you know, the kind of thing that's going to hit people, disability benefits, child benefit, working families tax credit. That's actually separate from your 8 billion, isn't it? I mean, you're going to do the 12 billion, all those cuts to vulnerable people, many of whom need the NHS, like everyone else, and then your 8 billion is on top of that.
Okay. Let me explain to you what Jeff is referring to. All the parties walked through the division lobbies in Parliament, and all three major parties agreed that we need to find £30 billion worth of savings in the next Parliament. My party has identified where those savings will come from. 12 billion will come from the welfare budget. One in every £10 spent, we think we can save in the welfare budget. And the reason we want to do that is we want the money targeted at the most vulnerable, the people who are unwell, and of course the disabled. We will deliver that. Another 13 billion will come from other unprotected departments. That's 25 billion. And a further 5 billion will come from aggressive tax avoidance and tax evasion. Next month, Google, Amazon, Starbucks will all be paying taxes in the UK. So we have outlined where we're going to find the 30 billion of savings. Labour, on the other side, have actually said that they will raise taxes, which is why we think that taxes will go up. I'll leave it to Jeff to answer that. I hope we can take questions from the floor rather than attacking each other from the panel.
Well, I'd certainly happy to come back later on that. Yeah.
I came here to hear about issues related to Stratford-on-Avon. Now, I know the NHS is a very important subject. You just spent 50 minutes talking to each other about it. Can we hear what you're going to do for our town, please, and our district? Thank you.
You're a local councillor standing again in the district council elections. So what would you propose that we do about it? Problems that you're referring to? Stratford, improving Stratford.
Ultimately, in terms of health and the macroeconomic issues, they're going to be affected at Westminster. What are you all going to do? And we can list all those issues. Traffic is the one that you've flagged up time and time again, the solution. What are you going to do about issues that every one of us living in Stratford are concerned about because they affect our lives today? And that's what we want to know. Well, we could all ask questions, and the NHS has been donned to death. We're all interested in it. It's great, important.
On that point about traffic, Nadeem has already started these traffic summits, which are discussions about what should be done. Jeff Kenner says this is just a lot of words, and what is really needed is action. So maybe Nadeem can defend his position in connection with traffic in Stratford, and Jeff can explain his.
Thank you very much, Preston.
Questions have already been given by Facebook and Twitter. Where we need these questions to be moving on. Other people have presented. No, the paper asked for questions to be sent in. The questions need to be addressed so that we can all hear the answers. I'm not disputing that. I want the next question.
Spend 5 minutes on the traffic issue. Let me just explain my position on this, and then maybe the other panelists can also speak to traffic, and then of course we'll tackle other questions after. We've got plenty of time to do all of that. Very briefly, one of the things that I felt I could do as your member of parliament is actually bring people together and make them begin to address the problem of traffic problems in Stratford-on-Avon. So what I did, I started with the first summit. The first summit was rightly so, people were angry and frustrated, but we took away all their suggestions. We had the county highways people there, the district, the local enterprise partnership, all the stakeholders were in the room. We came back, the second summit, we had a number of major proposals, and Waitrose very kindly lent me their little green tokens, and we asked people to vote on which of the major proposals would be the first and second that we should focus on. They did. They told us that they want us to focus on the Birmingham Road and of course on a second river crossing and a relief road. So we went away again, and the experts at highways came back with a proper survey on the Birmingham Road with detailed of different proposals on that. And then we asked people who attended, and of course you could also do it online so that you weren't precluded if you couldn't attend, where they would like to see a relief road go. We are now analyzing all that data. If I am back as your member of parliament, I promise you we will have a resolution to the Birmingham Road that we can put to everyone. People can vote on it. The difficulty is everyone thinks that they've got the best solution and their idea is backed by everybody else. But sometimes, I did 3 terms in local government. I can tell you, unless you make people make trade-offs and understand that their view may not be the most popular or the one that is backed, then we're never going to get anywhere. I think by the time we finish this process, we will have a resolution to the Birmingham Road, and hopefully we can bid for money, because government has a lot of money going into transport, £15 billion of money. The head of the LEP on transport spoke at the summit, the last summit, and said, look, there's plenty of money, even European money, that we can bid for if we really want to make the relief road and the second river crossing a reality. That is where we're at. I will leave it there. I'll ask other panelists to talk about traffic in Stratford, but we can then move on and talk about Trident or whatever else you want to talk about tonight.
By the way, I'd also like to know what the other candidates think about the traffic situation as well. So,
well, I mean, we had 4 years of inaction with Nadeem as MP before we had these traffic summits, and it's good to hear about the green tokens and so on. But actually, I think most of us, particularly those of us who are councillors, and I respect the views of those councillors, hear all the time about these things. We know about the Clopton Bridge, we know about the Birmingham Road, we know about the A46, and we know how much gridlock there is. We're concerned about, the installation of traffic lights as some sort of solution and so on. But there is funding already identified if we did go for the Long Marston Airfield scheme. It is a brownfield scheme. It was one of the 2 options that were before the district council. If the district council had gone for that, and they'd also gone for a realistic number in terms of houses that would have satisfied their own Tory Liberal Democrat government, then we would have had a core strategy a couple of years ago. That's why Labour voted against the core strategy proposal, not because we didn't want a core strategy, but we recognised that it would deliver neither a core strategy nor a solution on transport. That's what I meant by action on transport. The Long Marston Airfield proposal includes funding for a relief road. It includes primary schools and secondary school, 2 primary schools and a secondary school, and so on. And so, and a river crossing. Now, I'm happy to look for other sources of money, but we have to look at the practical realities. We already have these housing schemes. Better to go for a brownfield site, better to secure the investment that's already out there, and yes, go for European funding. Although to the extent to which we can get European funding while we're jeopardizing our membership of the European Union at the same time is questionable.
Very quickly, I think Kate Rolfe wants to ask a question.
One of the reasons that I didn't vote for the Long Marston proposal is because for 7 years of house building up to 3,000 houses, there would be no relief road. I represent south of the river, where all that traffic will travel down the Shipston Road and Banbury Road over the Clopton Bridge. That's why I didn't vote for it. If they come back with a solution that provides the relief road earlier, then I might reconsider. But please, Jeff, you don't live in Stratford. You live in Shipston. You don't have to put up with the traffic that my residents in my ward have to put up on a daily basis. Thank you.
People in Shipston who shop in Stratford, because that's our basic choice, given the lack of other options. People in Shipston who shop in Stratford for their weekly shop know too well, and I think we are one whole Stratford-on-Avon. All your vote did, Kate, was put it back another 2 years, the relief road. So I don't think that served anyone any good.
Gentleman over there.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask you, if I could, not only with the 2 questions we've had the health service, now we're on traffic. I'm sure you've got other good subjects tonight which will matter to these people. It's the pressure on services. Take it from me. Can you ask these panel members in government how they will manage the growing pressure on services, whether it's family courts, traffic, infrastructure, railways, or the national health? The big burning question that we keep avoiding is pressure on services. We saw that in Worcester. It wasn't a failure of government or good clinical failure. The people of Worcester Hospital, the A&E there, just drowned in demand. Can you please ask these people individually to tell us how they will address the huge pressure on services that has been year on year on year, and which has caused us all of these issues that we can sit and talk about tonight, and any others you want to talk about, Chairman?
Well, given that a UKIP man has asked that question, maybe a UKIP man could answer it.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Peter. Government targets for however many houses they want to see built. We don't have a core policy in Stratford. I really do beg the question of Jeff, why did you vote against it, as you said you did?
Because it was going to get rejected.
It was going to get rejected for what reason?
Explain.
You know, I despair, because we're talking about the traffic on the Birmingham Road, for example. How many? 10, possibly 11 sets of traffic lights, each one being effectively built every time you build some more houses. There's another, is it 3,000 houses being built at Bishopton? So that's just going to choke that road completely. And now what Kate's saying, well, that's a fact. How many sets of traffic lights on the Birmingham Road, if I may ask, please, from the junction with, sorry? 14. So there's actually more than I said then. Yeah. Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is every time they build a housing estate, sorry? Every time they build an estate, they put a set of traffic lights on the side of the estate road onto the Birmingham Road, so it just keeps on choking it up. And exactly what you're saying with regard to Long Marston development, if they were to develop there, which in some respects makes so much sense, where's the traffic going to go? Because ultimately, coming in from the south, where I come, over the Clopton Bridge, we have to get another road, another form of crossing across the river.
It's a brownfield site and it includes a crossing.
What does Long Marston?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You support brownfield sites.
And we support brownfield sites,
If I'm
absolutely.
correct, that's only a partial relief road, isn't it? It isn't a complete relief road.
But is that
Isn't a complete relief road.
The Shottery development already include, which is of course Scott Planning Commission, includes the remainder of it.
Yeah, I understand that, but whether they will they connect at the same time or whatever? I don't know. What, you think it will? You think it will?
Well, we have to go for that. There isn't any other game in town. It's all very well saying, you know, let's look for funding somewhere else. This is there now. This development's already going to happen. Let's get the infrastructure that goes with it. You know, all this head in the sand stuff from the Lib Dems and putting all these leaflets. We oppose everything. Well, they oppose everything and they deliver nothing.
Is that a question directed directly at Jeff Kenner? Any one of them?
Well, I've already answered it.
Yeah, in that case, look, maybe. Yes.
Can I just change? You're talking about money. My question. If I started printing £20 notes, it probably wouldn't be very long before the authorities came knocking on my door. In the United Kingdom, the Bank of England and the Royal Mint are the only bodies that are legally permitted to produce the notes and coins that we all accept as money. However, due to the law governing this activity being over 170 years old, private banks are allowed to create 97% of all the money in our economy. Do the candidates think that this arrangement is working in everyone's best interests?
Do you have an answer to that, Nadeem?
Well, I mean, you've been to see me twice about this, and there's the video on this. I mean, my very basic grasp of economics, I'm a chemical engineer rather than an economist, is that the Bank of England, which is independent, decides on the money supply. And that's the right way of doing it. I don't know whether the panel disagrees with that. I don't know whether the Greens think that the Bank of England should not be providing money. But that's my understanding, and that's the way it should be. It should be the independent Bank of England that delivers the money supply.
Yes, and the previous question was about pressure on services. And Liz, what do you think about that? That there's such an enormous pressure on services that it's something that politicians don't seem to sort of come to grips with.
Well, I think the problem is that everybody's looking through it through political lenses all the while. I mean, just on the traffic, I know as a resident who has to drive to Tesco on the Birmingham Road every week to do my shopping, if you just had a slip road going to the Tesco, it would solve a lot of the congestion that you get on the Birmingham Road. And that would be something you could do pretty quickly with not too much money, and it would solve so many issues, and that's what I would support. Now, in terms of services, one of the things we've done, because again, it's all these little names like the S106 payments and blah, 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 and nobody really understands what's going on. In government, we've brought in the community infrastructure levy, which basically at the moment, the current way it was working, every time a new developer comes in and they want to build new houses, the local government can put in an application for S106 funding, which basically says that all new houses the developers have to give some money to the council so that they can put in money for schools, for healthcare, for roads, so that they can cope with the new families and residents that are going to move in the housing. Now, the process for applying for those was that restrictive and was that bureaucratic. I've even started a healthcare petition myself because we realised that money for local healthcare services wasn't being claimed. And that, again, is going to put pressure on services. So now, under the new system, it's a lot easier when a developer comes in to get the money that we need. And it is right that the developers, they're going to build new houses, which at the moment, most of them are to suit the developers and to get money for them. It's not the housing that we actually need locally because the council hasn't been building the houses that we need locally. Well, then it's right that they should be paying some towards our services. So I'm really pleased that we're pushing that. But what we need now is to just get this local plan in place. And the reason we voted for it, Jeff, was so that it could be got in place. You want a lot more houses for Stratford, and you are not being truthful with residents. You've said in your leaflets that this relief road, it will be paid for by developers. Well, by that reckoning, it's going to take at least another 5,000 houses, precisely where they're going to create even more strain to even pay for that relief road. Look, we just want funding for the houses that we need. It's not that complicated. I think everybody else is making it so complicated. Let residents decide where they know where suitable housing would be, the housing that would be affordable for their children, because that's what we want. We want homes for our children so they don't have to move out of Stratford when they're in the 20s and the 30s. That's what we want new housing for. We don't want massive houses making money for developers. We don't want urban areas so that we turn into Coventry. We just want a sensible policy, and we want it to get done, and stop all the bitching. Just get it done. I don't understand what's so difficult.
Just, I want to bring Dominic in a moment, but first of all, not being truthful with the residents, Jeff. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, the 5,000 houses are in the plan that the Liberal Democrats voted for, so let's be quite clear about that. The only issue is, do you stick 2,000 houses or 3,000, whatever the final figure will be, next to the M40 in a completely environmentally unsustainable place, where it's quite clear that the government inspector, as things stand, has not approved it, and has said that the council has has been responsible for a major flaw in the core strategy process. You know, Labour, we highlighted all of those flaws. We put it forward in the debate. To their credit, 1 or 2 Conservatives and 1 or 2 Liberal Democrats voted with us. They understood that this core strategy would be rejected. I would love to vote for a core strategy that would be passed, and it would be one that would be in line with what we have to be realistic about what we can expect. And that we're talking about across the whole of Stratford-on-Avon district, a difference of about 1,000 houses, not in Stratford, across the whole of Stratford-on-Avon district. And my plan, what I've put forward, is to have a large number of those on a brownfield site, which actually contains funding for a relief road half the way. The other half has already been funded, and it provides for a crossing. You know, the Clopton Bridge, how much longer can we have HGV vehicles going over the Clopton Bridge? We need that relief road. The more immediate issues, I agree with Elizabeth, on the more immediate issues around the Birmingham Road. Let's our local councillors get on that. Let's our MPs, whoever is our MP, get in and shake Stratford District Council up. And as I said earlier, Stratford District Council needs to take a reality check, adopt a core strategy that's going to get through, and deliver infrastructure. I've proved that that can happen in Shipston, and Stratford can achieve the same.
Dominic, what is your take on all this, particularly this question of pressure on services and the environmental impact of housing developments and so forth?
Well, I'll try and answer all the questions really quickly so we can get on to other stuff before we all lose the will to live. The Green Party, don't clap that, please. We would like to move towards creating a national currency to answer the question about money. The power of creating money should be taken out of the hands of private banks. We'd separate the retail investment banks and use the government-owned Royal Bank of Scotland to create a network of local banks in every city and town, possibly called People's Banks, which would be obliged to offer cheap basic banking services like banks used to have before they turned into casino banks. The Green Party locally has a local manifesto which talks about more than just transport. I do know transport is important, and I'm actually not going to lie to you. I don't have the answer, even though I'm supposed to be a politician. I think we do need integrated, cheap, local public transport, so fewer people want to use private transport. We would like under 18-year-olds to have free local transport. If they get to use it at a young age, they're more likely to continue using it when they pay for it and less likely to buy cars, which would help long-term with our traffic problem. We'd like to look seriously at the train line through to Honeybourne. I think it's absurd that Stratford, the second most visited tourist attraction in Britain, doesn't have a train line that goes down to London quickly that way. Improved cycle facilities joining up the cycle paths, which they're not. Possibly, this might be a bit radical for you, so deep breath please, possibly pedestrianising the centre of Stratford. Occasionally, maybe, just a little bit. We are also This is one thing Edward and I have in common, and it's not a lot, but this is one. We are absolutely opposed to HS2, and that money should be going into extending platforms on current railway lines, stations, so we can have more frequent local trains, not just so the super rich can get from Birmingham to London 30 minutes faster in 20 years' time. We would like all of you to go home and get onto the District Council website and support the solar farm at Drayton Manor. That could create the same electricity that the town of Stratford uses. Stratford would be carbon neutral in its electricity use if that farm happened. Just think how brilliant that would be. And something that hasn't been mentioned at all by anybody yet, I don't think. Oh, sorry, it has in a housing sense. We need more activities for our young, our old, our disabled. We need multi-purpose community centres built so that people can use them. They can be training and education centres. We need those not just in Stratford, but around the whole district. That's as quick as I can do it, sorry.
I see that Peter Oakley's got another question. If you can be very brief, because I want to move on to another subject.
Excellent news. I'm sure you'll be the first one to point out to the member that none of the parliamentary people had anything to do with redirecting Sill. It's actually been an activity of our council by Councillor Peter Barnes, backed by Councillor Peter Morse and backed by Councillor Peter Oakley, who are trying, the first people in Britain, to try and push our district council into allocating Sill payments to specific hospital needs where they're under pressure. And I do hope that as an independent chairman there, you'll point out to the member that that's factually correct, what I've just told you. And thank you, Chairman.
Since I'm under some pressure to move on, there is a question here from Simon Payne, who's chairman of the Warwickshire Police Federation. Now, Simon was planning to come along tonight, but for some reason hasn't been able to make it. So I can ask his question of the panel. And he says, I believe Warwickshire has a police service to be proud of. If you had a message to the men and women of Warwickshire Police, what would it be? Edward Phelan.
I had a meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner some 2 weeks ago. Very pleasant hour in his company in Warwick. We discussed policing and the, I wouldn't say desperate lack of funds, but certainly apparent lack of funds. He would like more support, there's no question about that. From our perspective, I honestly do believe that we need to have bobbies on the street still. We don't need to be closing down police stations. We certainly don't need to have police interviewing suspects in a cafe. Ultimately, we will support whatever is necessary within the requirements of the police in Warwickshire. It's a great body, and obviously because of now with West Mercia, they're a stronger, more able body to actually respond when required.
Thank you very much. Liz Adams.
Well, firstly, you know, I've got family who work in the police, so I know what a fantastic job they do, and I know how difficult it's been actually, especially with some of the more experienced officers and constables being, you know, leaving, and then newer people coming in, especially when you're working on very high issues of concern such as paedophilia. They've lost a lot of expertise, and that's a real issue. So I think there's got to be basically we need to respect that, and we need to look at when there's funding cuts, whether actually, although just because somebody's on a slightly higher salary because they've been there longer, is it going to be worth more money in the long run to force them to go redundant and then have to train up several new officers who are going to need more time and effort then to spend working on that case? The other thing I would say is, please don't forget us in South Warwickshire, because I know it's generally a nice, lovely place to live, and within the realms of Warwickshire, perhaps there is more concentration of crime in more urban areas. But, you know, with still, you know, Stratford's in residents in Stratford pay their taxes. They deserve a fairer share of time and money spent on them from the police. We would like to see more bobbies out patrolling in Stratford. There were instances of mugging. Recently at my daughter's school, we've had letters sent round, people stealing from cars while they're parked on the school run. So it is going on, and the more criminals think, we've got a less of a chance of being caught because there's no one around here, they're all up in Coventry, then they're going to take the opportunity. So that's something that I'd say to them.
Right. And what about Nadeem? What do you think?
Can I put on record my commendation of Simon Payne? He's been a great champion for his members, and of course the Federation. I meet with him regularly, and of course with the Chief as well. We have a great track record of leadership in Warwickshire. Our last chief, Keith Bristow, has gone on to head up the National Crime Agency. I would say to the officers, thank you. Thank you for all the hard work that you do on our behalf and in keeping us all safe, both in the towns and of course in the villages. I would say to them that the work you're doing with Ron Ball, the Police and Crime Commissioner, is excellent. Keep it going. I meet with Ron regularly, as do the other Warwickshire MPs. I would say to them, continue to work with West Mercia, finding the efficiencies to allow us to make sure that the front line continues to be supported. But I don't want to be subsumed by West Mercia. That would be the wrong thing for us. And I really hope that the Police and Crime Commissioners continue to be supported. I think, first time around the election, yes, it was a low turnout, but we've got some excellent people, especially Ron Ball, who is independent. He's not from my party, for those who don't know him, but he's doing an exceptional job as Police and Crime Commissioner. People now know who to go to talk to about policy, strategy, and he has to put himself up to election again before all of us, and they know that he will have the influence over the Chief, and the Chief will be delivering the work where the rubber hits the road. That I hope all parties support the Police and Crime Commissioner and the great work they're doing in working with West Mercia and the great work they're doing in keeping us safe.
Jeff, what do you say?
Yes, well, first of all, I would like to echo what's been said about the work that has been done by Simon Payne in the Police Federation. I've met with him, and what he's told me has been quite shocking about the devastating effect on frontline policing of the 20% cut in policing, because we've got to be clear, one of the consequences of policing not being a protected area is that policing has become mainly, and the police don't want this clearly, mainly an emergency service, not so much a crime prevention service, not so much a community service, and we've got to get that back again. We've seen police stations closing all round the area, Alcester, Shipston and elsewhere. You know, we've got to bear in mind, we've got to address this issue. There's been nothing in the Conservative manifesto that indicates that they wouldn't continue with that level of policing cuts. And what we've said, and this is nothing against Ron Ball personally, who I have met and I respect his work, but what we've said is that this Police and Crime Commissioner, which is essentially a replacement for the previous system, which did involve local accountability through police representative body. This Police and Crime Commissioner is costing an absolute fortune, not just the post itself, but the elections. And I'm a Democrat. I'm all for elections, but the public, I think, voted by sitting on their sofas when it came to the Police and Crime Commissioner elections. It costs millions of pounds, and I don't believe it's achieved a proper solution. And when we see our police officers losing our jobs, I can't support the continuation of Police and Crime Commissioners. By getting rid of the Police and Crime Commissioners, and also other changes such as ending subsidies of firearms licenses and mandating police forces to work more closely together, we will be able to safeguard over 10,000 police officers for the next 3 years. So that is a simple question, again, a funded commitment. And only by having a funded commitment can we actually keep these frontline police officers and actually have neighbourhood policing in every community again. That's what we must strive for. The police need to get back on the beat, but we've got to identify the funding to achieve that. Labour will do that, and I think this is why it's so important that we take those steps and that we uphold the police, what the very essential values of the police to serve the community, which is what they want to do and what Simon Payne always tells me when I meet him.
Okay, before I bring Dominic in, there's a gentleman at the back who wishes to ask a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always difficult, isn't it, when you are in an election and you have the ability to see your prospective candidates and you're expecting so many great things from them. I'm sitting here at the back and I'm thinking, well, Cyril, it's going to get better. The hole is getting a bit hotter. Maybe things might stir itself up, but as I see it, and that last important question was asked about policing, which I think is a very important one, I've yet to hear or read about which any of you, whichever party you're in, will do something, say something positive to assist the police and particularly to assist the residents of this community. Because you stand by, you can talk as much as you want, but please, we just want action. Our Member of Parliament knows me well from knocking on his door. He listens well. I talk a lot. But I have to say, nothing has happened and things are going to get worse. So policing, for me, I think is an important issue in our community. Please, whoever gets in, come May, you know, no more talking, please. No more supporting our commissioner. We just want action. And sadly, I'm sorry, did I get interrupted there? If I could hear the question, I'll answer it for you. What did you say? Ah, good question. That is a very good question, and I'm glad you raised that, because it's quite obvious that we don't have any crime in our community. It's very clear that our Member of Parliament sees it that there's no problems. So, well, okay, well, there's obviously no problems here in this community. That's why we don't need any more policing. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
The gentleman just here who wishes to make a point, I think, in response. Yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah. Dominic, just very quickly before.
Thank you. I will try to be quick. To actually answer the question, which I think was, what would you say to the police force? That was the question, wasn't it? I would thank the police force for all the work they do. I met with Ron Ball. I felt a little bit uncomfortable. I was one of the 14% who went and voted, and I didn't vote for him or it at all. I didn't want it. My party wants to get rid of police and crime commissioners for the same reason as Jeff said. But having met him, I'm a little bit torn now, because I think, if I can believe what he says, and why shouldn't I, he does a really good job, and he controls things in a very independent way, because perhaps we're quite lucky we have an independent one. But what he said to me was quite interesting. Crime is dropping, but perception of crime isn't. We don't think crime is dropping because we don't see a Bobby on a beat and we don't see a police station. And he said he's got limited resources, which, to be candid, are only going to get more limited over the future years with fewer police on the beat. And he hasn't got the resources to send a policeman out when you've had your window smashed to sit with you and have a cup of tea and chat about it, when that policeman has to go and try and find the person who smashed the window. They haven't got time to be visible, to drive around in cars, to walk up and down streets is very inefficient. This is not what I'm saying, this is what they're saying, and I can understand that. So it looks to us like the police aren't around, but actually crime across the country and crime in Warwickshire is dropping. We need to listen to our police when we're talking about police and crime policy. We need to listen to our doctors and nurses when we're talking about NHS. We need to listen to our teachers. I hope there's a question on this. When we talk about education, that's what your MP should be doing. We are not experts. If I'm your MP, I would love to sit on the education board. I've got 25 years experience teaching. I don't think I'll be very good sat on another board. But that's not what happens with our politicians when they get to London. They're sent on the board where there'll be least trouble for the party whips. The thing that Ron Ball did say, well, you're lucky then, perhaps. But your doctor, Sarah Wollaston,
She chairs the health committee.
She wanted to sit on health committee. She was sent to something to do with the Cayman
No,
Islands.
she chairs.
Oh, yes, she was. I've read about it. It's not in the Daily Mail. What the crime that is rising is cybercrime, and that isn't solved by bobbies on the beat and people walking around. Cybercrime is going up because he said to me, criminals now realise it's better to stay at home and commit crime from home than to break into people's houses. So there's still a lot of crime. It's a different type of crime. And I felt that the Green Party policies resonated with a lot of what the police and the police force were talking about. We would like restorative justice. That works. It takes a bit of money, but it does work. We would like to treat drug addiction as a health issue. Liberal Democrats have said this as well, and not as a crime problem. Our prisons shouldn't be full of people on low-level drug problems because that won't help the prison population, which is going up, and our prison staff, which are going down. 30% cut under this coalition in the number of prison officers, and yet we've got more prisoners than any other country in Europe, and we're high up as a percentage of the population in the whole world, 88,000 people in prison. We'd like to provide proper funding for women's refuge, victims of domestic violence, and treat rape seriously. Thank you.
Edward, just respond to something that Dominic just said with regard to the size of our prison population. I think it's a fair shout that there's a fair few in that in those prisons who don't actually belong over here. They came over here as immigrants or illegal immigrants even, and they've ended up in prison because they were criminals over there. They're still criminals over here, and the quicker we get them shipped back to where they came from, the better.
How will you be able to...
Out of 88,000 prisoners, how many of them are foreigners? And
I understand the question. Thanks, Tom.
Well, how many? What's the answer?
I don't know that specific answer, but if you actually give me, excuse me, if you give me contact details, I'll be more than happy to give you that information tomorrow morning.
And for that, the very fact that you're doing that, I applaud you, because our democracy needs people to be able to sit in front of us and take our questions. But one of the things that I think is quite interesting, you asked us at the very beginning, how many of us were undecided? A lot of us put up our hands. I'm one of them. One of the reasons that we are possibly undecided, I speak for myself, is because people look at where their vote went to last time. They did not vote for a reorganization of the National Health Service. They did not vote for education policy that completely turned up our qualification system so that AS is no longer going to count. They did not vote for actually austerity that has not brought down the national debt. They did not vote for more employment based on 0 hours contract and part-time work. We must raise our debate this evening to the policy level. However important it is, local politics is actually at a district level. We need people who are yourselves able to articulate policy at a national level, and we have not heard enough about it. And I would like to urge the chair to please bring forward questions of policy that people in front of us this evening actually can talk about, not things that really you have not got control on, but you have got control of going into the lobbies and voting for policy. So please, could you address those issues? They are education, they are transport, they are housing. It is important.
Well, after that eloquent statement, Nadeem, what have you got to say?
Well, we can talk about education. I can tell you that the move for academies across my constituency, and I visit a school almost every week when I was the Member of Parliament. The leadership of those schools say that that was an excellent policy for their school. I can talk to you about the expansion of our grammar schools. I can talk to you about the Academies Fund that I've managed to secure money for our schools here to be able to expand and to build at Shottery and Ulster and in Stratford. So at Kes. So I can talk to you about all of that. I can talk to you about why I think it's the right thing to do, because there's 1 million more children going to good or outstanding schools today than there were 5 years ago. I can tell you all of that, but if we want to get onto that debate, happy to. Tonight we can talk about Trident. Someone shouted out from the audience, and my party is committed to delivering our nuclear deterrent. If you speak to any of the generals, whether General Sir Mike Jackson, General Dannett, they will tell you that the way you avoid bloodshed and pain and killing and war and murder is having a deterrent. I'd like to hear what the audience think, and of course what other parties would do on the Trident replacement. We know that there's one party in Scotland that is committed to scrapping Trident and getting rid of our nuclear deterrent. You see what happened to the Ukraine when they got rid of their nuclear deterrent. Mr. Putin was very happy to walk all over them. I wouldn't like that to be the fate of our country. I opened by saying the first responsibility of a prime minister is the defense of the realm. That's my position. We can talk about other things like halving the deficit. Yes, of course, you're right. The debt is still going up, but the deficit has been halved. That this economy has created 2.1 million jobs. This is a jobs factory, according to Christine Lagarde of the IMF, according to the German finance minister. This is the best economy in the world, that this government has had the right balance, according to the IMF, between the austerity measures and, of course, the way we have backed business to create those jobs, because government can't guarantee jobs. It has to be business. Small businesses, especially 5 million now small businesses, 750,000 small businesses have been created in the last 5 years. That's people who have put their livelihood at risk, gone out and started a business, and will hopefully succeed and actually employ more people. We can talk about all of that tonight. Happy to do it. I'd like to hear what the other panelists think as well.
In that case, maybe I can just ask Dominic what, in response to the comment about Trident and defense of the realm.
Education first, then I'll talk about Trident, because Nadeem did. Thank you. I'd just like to ask the audience a question.
Well, it was a general statement.
Thank you.
And he responded in a general way.
I know. Education.
Yeah.
Michael Gove. Think I've spotted the teachers in here. Education is being decimated. But in the last 20 years, I've been teaching for 25 years, and I'm seeing it happen. We are turning schools into exam factories. We are kicking out students who can pass tests, can't think for themselves. And I say that sadly as a teacher. We need schools to create individuals who can think for themselves, who can work collaboratively, who can work on their own, work as they are in life afterwards, not just pass test after test after test. We need to recouple the A-levels. That's an appalling idea. We need to let teachers teach in democratically controlled schools. We need education to be more than just something we measure in a league table. And we need to give teachers time. If you want to talk statistics, 61% of teachers are considering leaving the profession. 40% leave within the first 5 years. We're not keeping our best, and we're not retaining our best. And it is really quite dangerous what Michael Gove did in the 4 years that he was in charge. In fact, he's still in charge, really. He's just behind the scenes. He's destroying education. But anyone who's in education will know everything's changing at the same time. Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5, all in the wrong order. I'm having to teach new GCSEs, new A-levels. Hardly the syllabuses have come out. Obviously, there's no new textbooks and there's no new money. Ring fencing schools, yes, but that's not actually what happens, because schools still have to pay more money. Teachers, national insurance and pensions have gone up, so the schools element of that has gone up as well, and that money has to come out of the budget that's been ring fenced. You actually have less money. In the school I work at, Shottery, we get £4,000 a year per head to teach a sixth former. It costs us £8,000 a year to teach that sixth former. It's not sustainable. That's why schools are trying to get bigger, because they're becoming businesses that have to just look at numbers and heads and get people in, because then you get money to come into them. Phew, I'm glad I got it off my chest. And qualified teachers. We need schools to be teachers. Would you Would you get on a bus and the bus driver said, oh, I can drive the bus, but I never actually passed a driving test? You'd tell them to go and pass a driving test. Teachers should be qualified. If you're a brilliant teacher working in a school and you're not qualified, and I have worked, some of the best teachers I've met are not qualified, then you need to say, okay, hands up, I need to get qualified. And if you're a good teacher, you'll pass the qualification. It won't be difficult. It's not a threat to get rid of teachers who are good teachers but don't happen to pass the test. You should expect all the adults who are teaching your children to have passed some sort of national qualification to be able to do it. You do it with doctors, we should do it with teachers as well. What was the second question? Trident. Trident. Right.
Just very quickly.
Very quickly. Imagine we didn't have Trident. Would you vote for one of us if we said, okay, our foreign policy, defense policy, whatever you want to call it, we're going to spend £100 billion in the next 30 years creating a weapon of mass destruction? Would you actually vote for that if we didn't have it? We have to imagine we haven't got Trident because it needs to be decommissioned. There's already 17 nuclear submarines being decommissioned, but there's nowhere to put them because no one wants to look after the waste that comes with them. We don't need Trident. It won't work as a deterrent because everybody, including Putin, knows we would never use it. The reason he hasn't bombed us is not because we've got Trident. He hasn't bombed Germany, they haven't got Trident. He hasn't bombed Spain, they haven't got Trident. And it's not an independent deterrent, because do you think for 1 minute David Cameron or Ed Miliband, or whoever's the next Prime Minister, could use Trident without America's permission? Of course they couldn't. So we would never use it. It's too expensive. We're not living in a world where we need a submarine out in the ocean at any point. We need to take some of that 100 billion, we need to put it in increasing our foreign aid budget and thinking long term. We need to be helping solve the problems in North Africa, which historically we've created partially. I'm appalled at what's happened in the last 5 years, the Conservative coalition going into Libya, Cameron going over and having his Churchill moment and taking his photograph and saying, Libyans, I'm here to save you, you're all free now. And 3 years later, over 1,000 people have died in the last 2 weeks trying to get to Europe from North Africa. Now, short term, we need to help them. Long term, we need to help the region so that this doesn't happen in the next 30 to 50 years. How can we tell India, Pakistan, Iran, Israel, anyone else not to get their nuclear weapons if we've got ours? We have no moral authority if we build nuclear weapons for the next 30 years. We need to put that money in other things. We need to take the moral lead. We need to work with the United Nations, the European Union, the Organization of Europe, the Islamic states, and we need to say no to Trident, no to nuclear technology, yes to peaceful resolution, discussion, and long-term thinking, not what will get me elected. And I will finish on this. I'm absolutely appalled at the way the Conservative Defence Secretary accused Ed Miliband of stabbing the country in the back by possibly doing a secret deal with the SNP. That's appalling politics, and that's why people don't vote. And I considered voting Labour myself just to get him back on that. I won't, but it's absolutely disgraceful.
You said no to Trident, so bearing in mind some of the rhetoric we're still hearing on that, Dom, I live in hope on that. And incidentally, on that point, if you are concerned about the SNP, the one thing you can do in Stratford-on-Avon to stop the SNP is vote Labour, because people go around the country in England, vote Labour. That's what the SNP doesn't want. The SNP and the Tories, their game, and it is a game they're playing together, they're synchronising at least anyway, is to try and do down the Labour vote in England. But if in seats like this, people vote Labour, then that message can get across. And that's just as important for teachers, because teachers have made it quite clear in an opinion poll this week that teachers recognise they want to make their vote count in this election, and that means getting Ed Miliband as Prime Minister who has actually committed to protecting the education budget. And interestingly, sitting here in Stratford College, that includes under Labour's pledge colleges as well as the school's budget, because it's very important we talk about the whole of education, whole life education being a protected area, and that's something that we are absolutely committed to. And you're asking me how we're going to fund that. Well, one of the things, and it's a bit like the crazy NHS reorganisation, is the chaos caused by so-called free schools. These free schools are basically, any individual can go ahead and create a school, often in a place where there isn't a shortage of school places. There are lots of, people in the last couple of weeks, parents in the last couple of weeks, have had the worry of receiving a letter as to whether or not they've got a school place or not. And there is huge amounts of subsidy going in, thanks to Michael Gove, into these 3 schools, many of which are getting lousy Ofsted reports. It's a chaotic. It's a chaotic system. We will stop funding for any new free school because because we don't want to go into a big complex reorganization, but we want to stop that process in its tracks. And if democratically in those areas there is a view to have more local authority involvement, because after all, that is the elected body, to have a more strategic approach, that's fine. That will be a matter for the electorate in local council elections. But what we need to do is recognize that that's been a huge waste of money and use that to support the education budget. And I just want to say, respond about before I come to Trident, on this, the Mediterranean and what's been happening there. Because even just last week, as many people have drowned in the Mediterranean as went down in the Titanic. It's a horrific situation. And David Cameron was quite wrong to oppose the European Union rescue proposal several months ago. That was a lack of leadership which has had terrible consequences, not just his failure, although he was prominent in it, but the failure of other European unions to support the Italians and the work that they were doing using their navy. And I welcome the fact that Labour has committed to pushing to, in the European Union, because we will be a lead player in the European Union, without some kind of agenda about whether we should be in the European Union or not, that the European Union must use all of its resources, and it includes military resources. What's left of our navy after the coalition have cut it to bits, what's left of our navy ought to be working with other navies to support the Italians, to restart the rescue. That's why I've stated that if I am elected as your MP, I will commit to restarting the rescue and support what Ed Miliband is doing in the leadership that he's showing. Now, when it comes to Trident, we have, just on the Trident point that's been raised, Trident is part of a multilateral process. It's not. I don't like the fact that we have nuclear weapons. I wish we didn't have them. And that's actually a position, that's actually a statement that was made by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, I believe, as well as other leaders, incidentally, Nadeem, because I thought you shaked your head then. I don't like nuclear weapons, but we've already got them, and we've got to review what we need to defend our country. And bear in mind that President Putin has got these weapons. Bear in mind the danger of ISIS. Germany, Dom, has got nuclear weapons. They're American nuclear weapons. Most countries in Europe were part of the NATO framework. If it can be shown through a defence review that we need to make a decision about how many submarines we have, any way we can save money on it, fine. Because if it's about finance, then I think all parties would agree we need to look to save money. It is about £3 billion a year. And I don't think we can jeopardize our national security just for the sake of a sum of money. We have to look at the global picture. We have to recognize that what would be the position without Trident, with Britain without those weapons, where would we be if we faced a genuine crisis in the world, where we were threatened with nuclear weapons? It's all very well to say whether or not people will or will not use them. I don't think we can second guess President Putin or people like ISIS if they got nuclear weapons, or anybody else.
I might just interject, apologies. There's a young man at the back, he's had his hand up for a very long time, and I think it might be nice to hear from a younger member of the audience. So if you'd like to ask a question.
I'd like to say a bit about both Trident and education. Firstly, you can't really make decisions about Trident when you're going to renew it. That's going to be years and years into the future. That's going to be when I'm, an adult, maybe running the country possibly. And you can't guess what's going to happen then. A few years ago, everyone was going, yeah, we're going to get rid of nuclear weapons. It's all going to be fine. It's all going to be nice and friendly. And then things with Russia's happened and the Middle East. Also, saying that, having Trident's all well and good, but recently there was an incident where there's a foreign submarine in British waters, and we had to look to the French to help us after we scrapped our maritime patrol aircraft due to defence cuts. If we're looking to the French to defend our own country, something must be wrong. Also, on education, I know a couple of parties out there, a couple of candidates are more against getting rid of grammar schools. I go to a grammar school, and there are problems with the selection. It does select people. People could says, oh no, you're not good enough, and stops them from succeeding well. But really, if you get rid of grammar schools, you're going to be letting private school children, who like almost half of Olympic gold medalists all from private schools. It's crazy. If you're going to let private school kids be running all the top businesses, top politics, grammar schools are worth that, even if it's just getting a few normal people into the top of the country.
Right. We've got less than 10 minutes to go, and the Dean, I think, wanted to just say a few words in response to something Jeff said. So, and sorry? Yeah. Okay.
Just very brief, Jeff talks about the SNP. The SNP want £148 billion of an extra borrowing and higher taxes and unilateral disarmament. We know that. They want to hold, I think, Britain to ransom. On 75 occasions, Labour spokesmen have either actually said they will look at a deal or not denied it at all. I think the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, is very, very good at communicating, but has very dangerous ideas, and she will hold Ed Miliband to ransom.
No. Conservative peer Lord Forsyth said that you're jeopardising the union. Because that's all the Conservatives can talk about.
Jeff mentioned it. I was responding to Jeff. You mentioned it. You said the SNP and Conservative are together.
Yeah.
That's what you said, Jeff. I'm just responding to that.
I think you've just proven it.
Right.
Can I respond, please?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, go ahead.
To the young man at the back with the KES badge on, we are absolutely in support of all grammar schools. Believe me, we are. With regard to our education, I've heard what Dom said. He's a man of 25 years experience. I really do feel for him in that respect. As far as UKIP are concerned, we would ease teachers' workloads by cutting down on assessments, data collection and appraisals, and we'd scrap teachers' performance-related pay. We'd abolish key stage 1 SAT tests at primary level. We'd bring back grammar schools and support a range of secondary schools, including vocational, technical and specialist schools. And one of the things that we're very proud of, we would waive tuition fees for science, technology, engineering, maths and medicine students at university.
Other subjects?
Well, those are the ones that we have prioritised as being the ones that we would abolish tuition fees for. And with regard to the others, I can't comment at the moment. Yes, with regard to Trident, if I could just say that we support Trident. We don't want to see a defence budget of 2% of GDP being reduced in any way at all. With regard to the poor Libyan refugees and that dreadful scenario at the moment in Sicily, again, I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning of this evening. Let's take the politics out of that and let's get every country in Europe to lend a hand to put this thing right. And ultimately, we need to get some dialogue with whoever's running Libya at the moment to try and resolve this if we possibly can.
Thank you very much. One final question, really, that I think... Sorry?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
very brief. I think the lady wanted to hear our policies, national policies from the party. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what our priorities would be if we formed part of the next government. And those are the 5 issues on the front page of our manifesto. In 2010, we had 4 main policies on the front page of our manifesto, and we delivered on every single one of them. The same would be said on the 5 on the front of this one, which is to sort out the economy. And on the questions of deficits and structural deficits and things, I think the key thing with the economy is confidence. And it was clear that a lot of money was being wasted before. There were things that the government at the time could have done in order to mitigate the effect of the global economic crash on people in this country. So what we would do is to continue to make savings to cut the deficit. However, those would be cuts that were necessary, and we have said that we would not cut as much as the Conservatives, because we do believe that some of those are based in ideology and would hurt the economy just as much as if we didn't keep spending under control. In addition to that, we would prioritise those at the lower end of the pay scale who would benefit most from more income tax cuts. And that is a Lib Dem policy that has made a difference to literally millions across the country. I believe in the value that if you have gone to work and you've worked hard for your money, if you're earning the minimum wage, you shouldn't be having to pay any of that money back in taxes to the government, because the minimum wage is low enough as it is. And the job that you've been doing, you deserve to take that money home and you decide how you spend it. So we would be raising it again, the income tax threshold, to £12,500. Education is the priority for our party, which is why I'm a Lib Dem. I'm a mother of 2 young children. I'm not long got out of education myself. So I absolutely see that this is the way forward. With so many problems in society, if we did things in the educational system, increased awareness of various issues, it would save money in the long term. Business people will talk about investments. There is no better investment than our young people and our children, because they are our future. Yeah. So that is why Lib Dems are prioritising, and we have a fully costed policy to protect the education budget up until 19. Also, a local issue, we would correct the funding formula and to make it fairer, because currently children in our area get less funding per head than those in London, which I think, it's another issue of this wider devolution. We've got to have somebody who will fight for the Midlands, for Warwickshire, and make sure that we're not losing out funding to London, because our children are worth just as much. The final thing, 2 final things, is green laws and the economy. All the young people I talk to are absolutely engaged when you talk about climate change, because they know in their lifetimes they could be suffering from the effects. So we have 5 green laws that will also strengthen the economy, working with green businesses and the Green Investment Bank, but also help to get the targets for climate change under control. Finally, it's mental health care. 1 in 4 people will be affected by mental health care, and the Lib Dems are the party that has led the discussion for this to become a national issue. And we will ensure that funding for mental health care and mental health care waiting times are treated at the same standards as physical health care. Also, just quickly on Trident, we do support retaining some form of nuclear deterrent, because we do believe that it would keep our rightful place on the Security Council and in negotiations on an international level. I personally would love to be in the position where no countries in the world have nuclear weapons, and I think it's something that we should be pushing for internationally, for multilateral nuclear step downs across the board. However, at the moment, we're not in that position. However, a like-for-like renewal of Trident is just money wasted. Even people who work in international defence have said that in its current format, it's in effect a Cold War era deterrent. It needs updating so that it can be useful for the modern threats that we face in society. And just quickly, I want to come in because you want an MP for this constituency who would be able to affect national policy and would be able to get things done on a national level. One thing I have to talk about is our party's policy on domestic violence, because I wrote it personally. I worked with national charities, Women's Aid, Ava Project. It was something that was personal to me. I spent a year and a half going through research, voted it through in conference, lobbied the rest of my party, put forward evidence, and then lobbied for it to be in the manifesto, and it is there. And because there is agreement from some other parties on points of it, it looks set to be held in law in the next Parliament. So I have a track record of being able to really dedicate my time, work on issues that are important to me and important to the constituency, and getting action.
One final line from the eloquent lady at the front.
Onto the private shoulders, the shoulders of our young. And that really cannot be not mentioned in the whole of an evening's debate. That really was unacceptable.
So what I need to do, just one final point. Has anyone changed their minds tonight? Anyone? 1, 2, 3. Possibly.
Great if we all had a statement like this.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's a very good closing statement. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much for coming along, and indeed the panel. And it's been an interesting evening. Even if not everyone agreed with each other.
Please let me know if Nadine tweets anything you misrepresent.
Is it me or is it hot in here? Right, thank you. I just want to say a formal thank you once again. 2 hours is never enough to discuss, and I'm sorry that not all of you had the chance to get your questions addressed, but I'm sure they're happy to hear them after the event and through email. So just once again, I'd like to say thank you very much to all 5 of our candidates for turning up this evening.